Let's just get the big one out of the way. This massive extension for Bobby Witt Jr. 11 years. The Royals making the correct move. This is exactly what they should have done. Absolutely. This has been talked about now for a while. And after the season that Bobby Witt Jr. had last year, my goodness. And to be honest with you, I think he could be even better than this. I mean, looking at this season, he had a 5.7 Fangraph WAR in his second season at only 23 years old. That's not bad if you ask me. 276 with the batting average, a 319 on base. That could get better. That still could get better. Improve that plate discipline a little bit. Man, imagine how much more this guy can do. Had a 495 slugging. That's solid. A 115 WRC plus. That's solid. 30 home runs. But the big thing with Bobby Witt Jr., it's not just what he can do at the plate, which still has room for improvement. He already gives you some speed. And I don't say some speed. He gives you a lot of speed. He's good with the legs. I'm just saying, 49 stolen bases. He's got 79 stolen bases so far in his career, but it doesn't stop there. This guy was very good at shortstop last year. He had some issues in that rookie season. There were a couple little bumps there, but look at the improvement. He was in the negatives on defense in 22, and then jumped up all the way to 14.7 last year with the defense. I mean, that is phenomenal. Even if we go take a look a little bit further, right? He had 14 outs above average last year. Now, the defensive runs saved, we can maybe get that cleaned up a little bit. But you know what? Hey, I'm looking at the 14 outs above average, and that's really solid, if you ask me. So now, let's talk about the money. We all just want to know about the money, right? Now, Bobby Witt Jr. last year was worth $46 million in field value. What he brought onto the field, what he put up with the stats, was worth $46 million. Now, baseball trade values, and like I said in the intro to the show, we were looking at this contract last night, and I was even saying, I don't know, Julio Rodriguez, he got around 210, and I'm thinking, man, maybe I could see Witt Jr. getting more than that, maybe like 240 or so, maybe I think I said 230, 240, and he blew that out of the water. Now, baseball trade values, they were projecting for 10 years, $265 million. For some reason, I can't click on 11 and 12 years, so I'm not sure what's happening there. But he got the 11-year deal, and that comes out to $288 million. So they were not far off, right? Add on basically one more year, and they were pretty much dead on with what his contract extension looked like. Everyone, listen, I'm going to plug baseball trade values because they are friendly friends of the show. And listen, you can go use these timelines if you get a subscription for the whole year. 10% off if you use the code HYDE. They have been phenomenal when it comes to the free agent values, right? The contracts that these guys have been getting, the extensions, right? It's been really good so far. I think you could even argue that, hey, they've done better when it comes to all of these contracts versus the trades, right? The trades, you're always going to have more, variability in there, right? So to me, it's always going to be harder to really nail the trades, right? Because there's so many different things at play, so many different factors at play. But with the extensions, really, you're just looking at the numbers, and you're really just looking at the stats, and you're looking at the age, and you're looking at the future projections. So it's a little easier to nail down the contracts, right? So Bobby Witt Jr., in my opinion, absolutely was worth that money because, again, if we just go take a look at the field value from last year, $46 million, and he's only 23 years old, I expect this guy to be hanging around anywhere from 30 to 50 million per year, maybe even more than 50 million down the road once he even improves on a couple of things, so this guy was well worth the money. Now, funny enough, if we actually go take a look at the Royals payroll now, who would have thought the Royals payroll, we would see someone in here with, $30 million on the contract, $35 million, right? Who would have thought the Royals would ever be, doing stuff like that? Now, I know you had Salvador Perez, making, $20 million this year, $22 million in 2025. But hey, it's good to see the Royals, right? Kind of putting forth the money a little bit, right? You had to do this. This is your star. this was a no-brainer, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to throw a wrinkle into this. Because I feel like no one has really talked about this. Will he make it the whole contract? Right? There are some opt-outs in here after 2030 and after 2031 and after 2032 and after 2033. I'm going to be honest with you. I think there's a very good chance he ends up opting out. Sorry, Royals fans. I'm not trying to deflate your good day. This is a good day, right? You're going to be having Bobby Witt Jr. Secured until, his age 30 season, basically. I'm going to be honest with you. He's going to be right in the middle of his prime at that point. It's going to be an interesting decision. It's going to be a very interesting decision. Now, if we go back to the player value timeline, right? If I go, so again, he can opt out after 2030, right? That's going to be the first opt-out. And I honestly think there's a good chance he could opt out, right? So if we go take a look at the projected field value in 2030, right now he is projected for $47 million, right? So if he's putting up these baller numbers, and he's 30, I mean, honestly, I wonder if he thinks to himself, I don't know, man. We might be able to get ourselves a pretty good contract until maybe 40 years old. And imagine what, money is going to be looking like down the road at that point. Guys are getting what they're getting now. And, hey, factor in that inflation, right? And, factor in all these raising prices for these players. I honestly wonder if there's a good chance that he could end up opting out, right? But either way, you're going to be having Bobby Witt Jr. for the good years. And I honestly think we are going to start seeing teams approach players like this. I think we're still going to have free agency, obviously. We're still going to have those big moves, right? But it honestly feels like we are maybe transitioning into a difference when it comes to getting these players signed, right? You're just seeing it so much more now. These young players getting the contract extensions through their arbitration years, right? Sign them through those arbitration years and then give them a couple of more years after that. I wonder if that's what we're heading towards, right? Because you're seeing now Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Cody Bellinger. These guys are still on the market, right? They're in their 30s, right? And again, I know that kind of goes against what I just said, right? But maybe at that point with Bobby Witt Jr., there's a bit of a difference there, right? Where Blake Snell, there's been some little issues, right? Where people say, well, is he really worth that money, right? He's had some injuries in the last couple of years. He's walked a lot of guys. I'm going to be honest with you. There's actually a really good article on Fangraphs. I'm going to plug that really quick because it's a pretty good article. They actually came up with an article for Blake Snell, whether or not the walks were actually by design, right? Or if they were done purposely, right? Not that he's walking guys on purpose, but more the way he was attacking the hitters. They actually made a pretty good argument to where it could be by design. And it's not really so much a command issue. Go read that article. It's pretty interesting, and it actually made me wonder whether or not what the way Blake Snell was going about it. Right? Because if you go look at his numbers, Blake Snell has always had a pretty lower walk rate. He's never really been too high. They made some good points. They, talked about like waste pitches and stuff like that, not wanting to make mistakes and just kind of letting guys just go, right? And so it's interesting. Go read that. Anyway, but there's some arguments against these free agents at this point, right? Cody Bellinger had the 3 bad years of the Dodgers. Jordan Montgomery, is he really worth ace money? Blake Snell, the walks, sure. But I wonder if maybe we're going to get to a point where these guys they're not going to be getting these huge contracts because they tend to not really work out, and teams seem to be okay with, especially now that you have more of a chance to get into the playoffs with a third wild card. It kind of seems like teams are okay with not really adding this star power at that price. So I'm very intrigued for the next few years or so to see what teams do when it comes to off-season moves, right? And getting, these extensions, and whether or not they would rather just go that route instead of going out and getting those guys. Now, for me, I think the answer lies in the middle. I think you should be locking up the young guys, right? Get these guys signed through their arbitration years. Give them a couple more years after that. Go after some free agents, right? So I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle, whether or not the right approach is to sign the long-term guys or go after those free agents, and I think there's a mix. I think there's a good balance somewhere in between there that I would think is the right answer. All right. So moving on, Bobby Witt Jr., fantastic. Gotta love that. And the guy, in my opinion, I think he's going to be a star. I'm excited to see what Bobby Witt Jr. can do, and I'm excited to see what the Royals can do this coming year, man. I don't know. And one more thing to add about that. I wonder how that's going to go mentally for Bobby Witt. He's got this big contract now. I wonder, could that work against him this coming year? Or could that maybe take a weight off his shoulders, right? Okay, all right. He's got the long-term deal now. He can kind of, relax a little bit. So let's see what ends up happening with Bobby Witt. I'm going to lean more towards that, now that he's got the extension done, he can just go focus on some baseball. So I think we're going to be in for a lot of good years of Bobby Witt Jr. So let's move on here. Let's get to the story that kind of sparked today, and that is Jorge Soler with the San Francisco Giants. So this is one I am not really going to sit here and say I thought about. Not once did I ever think about this. Going to be honest. Like, anytime I think of the Giants, I think of them getting guys that can move around, have versatility. Jorge Soler, yes, he can go play some outfield. He can. But is that really somewhere where you want to put him, especially in a big outfield in San Francisco? Hey, I mean, listen, they've made, an out-of-the-box move this offseason already. All right, signing Jordan Hicks. Everyone thought he was a reliever, and now they're going to be using him as a starter. So, what is that noise? I thought I just heard, like, the loudest bit of thunder, and it's someone with a motorcycle outside, and my goodness, I don't know what the heck just happened. Jorge Soler, when you think about what the Giants seem to do, doesn't seem like a guy that would be fully into, but I can understand the bat, right? Because the Giants, at the end of the day, they need a bat. So I wonder if maybe, this is what I'm thinking. If the Giants, coming into this offseason, I personally don't think Jorge Soler was someone that was at the top of their list, right? I'm looking at guys, Bellinger, right? That seems to be one right away in the offseason this year. That was the main name that was connected, right? So that seems to have, the ship has sailed on that. It seems. So, looking at there's been some other options that have popped up. They ended up going with, Jung-Hoo Lee, which I love that signing for them. And, it kind of makes me think eventually, as the offseason went on and they're talking to these guys that are out there and they're seeing prices are pretty high, and Jorge Soler, at one point, it was reported that he was looking for a 3-year deal. Maybe the Giants thought, you know what, hey, maybe he's not exactly the mold of a defensive player that we're looking for exactly, but we really would like that bat. That's kind of the way I'm thinking about it. And Jorge Soler would be a huge addition for the San Francisco Giants. Last year, the Giants ranked 21st overall in WRC Plus with a 93, while Jorge Soler posted a 126, hit 36 home runs, a 341 on base, a 512 slugging. That was the one thing I talked about with the San Francisco Giants coming into this offseason. They needed a bat. They needed to do something. That's why I was on the Cody Bellinger train. They needed something for center field. Probably thought, okay, too expensive. We'll do Jung-Hoo Lee, use him as a leadoff hitter. We'll find some power elsewhere. We'll find a big bat for the middle of the order somewhere else. So, but then I kind of started thinking, well, you got a lot of players here, right? You got a lot of guys you're going to have to rotate already. But let's be real. Yes, Wilmer Flores had himself a pretty solid year last year. He was the only guy that had over a 500 slugging. So he will be a big part of this team moving forward. But then I'm looking at some other guys here, and kind of thinking, also I forgot to mention Max Chapman. That was a guy, right? That I've been on that bandwagon for the Giants for a little bit now. And, but Max Chapman, while I love the defensive upgrade it would give the Giants, he's not really going to be that game-changing kind of a bat. I still think he would be a really good addition for this Giants team personally. But then you got to think, well, what do you do with J.D. Davis? So that's interesting. You could still make that move, obviously. But if you bring in a Jorge Soler and Max Chapman, I feel like it's going to get a little complicated at that point. So I'm wondering if you bring in Jorge Soler, you probably end up doing something with Lamont Wade Jr., right? You do something with Michael Conforto, Thairo Estrada. I would imagine that some kind of a rotation happens where you see Soler have a lot of the DH duties. Flores, he can play a couple of different positions. He can move around. Estrada, he can move around a little bit. Soler can go play some outfield some days. It's not going to be the best defense out there, but, they'll make it work. But I think with the Giants, what they will do is they will simply, if it does happen, if they bring in Soler, who knows if it actually is going to happen, but, I would imagine it's probably going to be a rotation. So that seems to make the most sense because you got a lefty bat in Lamont. You got Thairo Estrada as a righty bat. And we know the Giants, they like their platoons, so they would probably find a way to make this work. And then, Conforto, he's the lefty bat. Soler's the righty bat. So, he kind of fits into where you can work the lefty and the righties. So that makes sense to me. That makes sense. I think it would be a really fun fit. We know the Giants, they do have the money. It comes down to whatever they're valuing Jorge Soler at. Is that going to be the right fit when it comes to what they see him as and what Jorge Soler and his side see himself as when it comes to a contract? So, that's how it always works, right? But it'll be interesting because I think at this point, for the Giants, they are in a position to where, like my Red Sox, sorry to bring my Red Sox into this, and other teams too, where, maybe they don't want to be handing out more than the Red Sox. They don't want to be handing out more than 2 years. It seems, according to reports, they don't want to go that third year. Whereas the Giants, they're a team that, in my opinion, they're not giving off that vibe, right? That they're okay with, maybe going that extra year, right, to get something done, right? Because they're a team, I think they're a pretty talented team. They're a team that could absolutely go for a wild card at this point. I wish the Red Sox would work in that mode as of right now. So, you look at this rotation, I'm going to be honest with you, I really like the look of this rotation for the Giants. I love Kyle Harrison. I think this is a guy that's going to be a baller. Jordan Hicks, listen, if they can figure it out with him, I think that's great. What an addition that would be, a low-key addition like Jordan Hicks. That would be fantastic. I'm a big fan of Keaton Winn. Tristan Beck, I think that's fine. Keaton Winn, man, look out for him this coming year. He's got some nasty stuff, throws a lot of strikes. I wonder if Keaton Winn ends up having a breakout year this year for the Giants. Bullpen, pretty solid, right? Duvall back there. You got the Rogers brothers, sorry. I think they're looking pretty solid there. I think Soler would really give them... Oh, sorry, Baseball AI. Why do I always forget about Robbie Ray? I always forget about Robbie Ray. I am such an out of sight, out of mind kind of guy. My potato brain falls victim constantly. If I don't see you for a while, I just forget about you. And I'm sorry, Robbie Ray. A fellow Robbie, right? So I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Yes, you are correct. Robbie Ray will come back. And then that rotation, it looks even more solid. So I would love the addition of Jorge Soler for the Giants. And I was kind of saying that for the last couple of weeks. I feel like a surprise team is going to have to jump in because I feel like the teams that he's been connected to, the Blue Jays went with Turner. The Mets seem to be fine with just going internally. I think the Mets, they were probably looking at a 2-year deal max for Soler. Same thing with the Red Sox. He would be great. He would be good for the Red Sox, the Mets, the Blue Jays before Justin Turner. And then, I don't know, they all seem to just have a different idea of which way they want to go. So then I've been kind of beating that drum where, okay, I feel like a surprise team is going to have to enter this. And listen, I'll be honest, I didn't think of the Giants. I said the Tigers at one point. I think I might have mentioned the Padres if they wanted to maybe spend a couple bucks, right? The Giants never crossed my mind. I don't know. Did I ever say the Giants? I don't think I did, but I think it would be a really fun fit. They do need a bat like that, in my opinion. A power bat, I think, would just give some glue to the middle of that order. I feel like Giants fans would love him. That's just me. Now, if you're going to be doing Soler, I think that would, maybe I'm wrong, I think that would take you out of the Matt Chapman sweepstakes, personally. I don't know. I feel like if you bring in Soler, then unless you trade J.D. Davis, I don't see Chapman really coming in. So I think it's going to be either or. If I were to go with a guy, if I'm going Matt Chapman or Jorge Soler for the Giants, I'm going Jorge Soler, to be completely honest. I think you figure out the matchups, the lefty-righty matchups. To me, the Giants need that bat a little bit more, and you just hope for some better defense from J.D. Davis. That's just me. So I think it would be a fun fit. Let's see if it happens. So in the chat, let me know. What do you think? Do you think Jorge Soler would be a good fit for the San Francisco Giants? Give me some thumbs up here in the chat, thumbs downs. Let me know what you think. I'm very curious to see. Before we do move on to the next segment, everyone, if you can, just a reminder, hit that like button for me. That's all I ask from you. And I do have to go over tonight's sponsor, our friendly friends over at BetUS. Everyone, we got Super Bowl coming up. And right now, we got a big special for the Super Bowl this coming weekend, right? We got the Chiefs, right? We got the 49ers. But they are going to give you 125% of a bonus on your, instead of your first deposit, on your first 3 deposits. That is pretty good, if you ask me. That is not bad. So you're getting an extra 75% on your bonus. That's almost a 100% match, right? So I'm just saying. I think that's a really good deal to take advantage of. There's a whole bunch of different ways to play when it comes to the Super Bowl this weekend. Seriously, go check it out. There's a whole bunch of other different ways to play, right? We got basketball, not just the NBA. We got college as well. We got hockey every single night. But for baseball right now, let's go over some of the season specials that are going to be coming up here for this coming year. So as of right now, they have, if you wanted to drop something when it comes to the best regular season record, well, they're giving the edge to the Dodgers. I think that's going to be a favorite pretty much among all of the betting companies out there. Got the Braves coming up next, the Astros. They got the Yankees coming in 4th, the Phillies in 5th. The Rangers, I wonder with the Rangers, man, that's an interesting one, right? Because I feel like a lot of that is coming from the fact that they just won a World Series. I don't know. I wouldn't even put the Rangers this high, to be completely honest. I could see, I find it hilarious that the Orioles are ahead of the Rangers, or are behind the Rangers at this point. I think that's hilarious to me. I don't know about this. I don't know if I agree with this. Honestly, listen, if I'm going with maybe a low key kind of a bet, maybe the Orioles can end up having the best regular season record. Now, that would be pretty tough against the Dodgers. Now, I don't know. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know in the chat here. I think that's a good question. Who do you think has a better regular season record in 2024? Do you got the Dodgers or do you got the Orioles? Let me know in this chat down below. I'm very curious to see what you all say. And then, of course, we got some other teams down here. But, I don't see really much of these teams going for, the top record, honestly. I think the Orioles could make some noise there. The Dodgers, I think that's a pretty easy one to go with at this point. The Yankees are interesting for this coming year, right? Now, I'm not going to dive into season previews at this point. But yeah, if I'm a betting man, from being the BetUS man that I am, I think the Dodgers are a safe bet. I think the Braves could be a safe bet as well. The Astros, I don't know about the Astros. I think they're going to be really good again, but best record, I don't know. The Yankees, hey, man, if they gel, if they start just firing on all cylinders, who knows? Maybe the Yankees could end up doing something. Phillies, I don't know. Something about the Phillies. Right now, I don't like their starting pitching as for the best record. I like their starting pitching, but to be able to post the best record next year, not quite sure about the Phillies at this point. I already talked about the Rangers, but the Orioles, right? Got a very strong rotation now. A lot of young talent coming up like Jackson Holiday. Good-looking lineup. bullpen, I feel like, could still use a tweak, which leads to our next story. But everyone, please make sure you go check out BetUS. Like I said, you got some Super Bowl specials this coming week. A 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. That is absolutely fantastic. Go check that out. But the link is in the description down below. Even if you don't do that, I mean, that is the special for right now. But for all other times, with that link, you get a 125% bonus. But everyone, go check out BetUS, proud sponsor of the channel. But speaking of bullpens, we got a little something a little earlier from Jon Morosi. Now, I understand, people, they're kind of getting all. I think Jon Morosi's been a pretty easy target this offseason, especially after the whole Ohtani thing. People have been going after him. So I understand what happened here with this tweet. A lot of people were coming after him for this one. And he says here, Guardians closer Emmanuel Clase is drawing trade interest for multiple teams, but a deal appears unlikely in the near term. Now, a lot of people were kind of going after him. Like this guy right here, like Bryce Spalding. This is literally already common knowledge. I mean, I don't know. The way I interpreted it was, teams are making calls, right? Yes, Emmanuel Clase has been in the news this offseason, but Jon Morosi is just simply stating that he's drawing trade. I think he more means that this is like very recent interest, right? Yes, there's been interest in Emmanuel Clase this offseason, right? But, that maybe that cooled off over the last couple of weeks. And now maybe it's starting to heat up again, right? And he does say here a deal appears unlikely in the near term. I think he's just reporting the fact that he's hearing that the Guardians are getting some phone calls, some very recent phone calls. That's the way I took it. I think it's a little unfair, for, like Bryce Spalding here. Hey, sorry, man. I don't know. I think people are just getting mad just to get mad here with Jon Morosi, in my opinion. I don't know. I just think the way I took it when I first read it, they're getting some recent phone calls. Hey, that happens, right? That's happened plenty of times in other off seasons. Teams are getting a call on one player. Okay, all right, and then it dies off for a little bit, and all of a sudden that heats back up again. Maybe it dies off again, then it heats back up again, right? It's just how it works in the front office world, right? Everything's always fluid. Things are changing. We hadn't heard anything on Emmanuel Clase for like the last couple of weeks, so I don't know. So I think this is more that he's just just reporting some recent interest. But as for Emmanuel Clase, what is the deal going to look like for Emmanuel Clase? Well, if we go take a look at the trade value for him, let's actually go from top to bottom here. And Emmanuel Clase, he is going to be very expensive, right? And you would think, well, he's a reliever. Why is he going to cost all that much? Well, he's only 26 years old. He's very good. He's under a lot of control at this point. I mean, yeah, he's going to cost you a lot of bucks, right? 51.4 is what BTV is saying for the median value. Now, that could go as low as around 40, could go as high as around 60, depending on market, team needs. There's always those differences between the way teams value players as well. So that's why they do a range, right? It's still, even that's not going to be perfect, but hey, they've gotten a lot of these right, and it is what it is, right? But Emmanuel Clase, he is going to cost a lot. But I came up with some teams that I think, as of right now, I've gone over this before with Clase. Again, this isn't anything new, like people in that tweet with Morosi were saying. This is not the first time we've talked about Emmanuel Clase, but other teams have made moves, and hey, not the teams that I've mentioned before maybe don't line up right now based off of activity or lack of activity, right? So if I were to go over some teams, we've talked about the Dodgers at length. This is a pretty obvious one. They got all the prospects. They could use something else. We'll talk about Ryan Brasier in just a little bit, but they did bring him back. But that maybe actually tells me maybe they're not really in the market for Clase. I don't know if that takes them out or not. Brasier was really good for them last year. So Could that be their way of saying, nah, we're not going to go for Clase. We're good with bringing old Red Sox legend Ryan Brasier back, right? Who knows? They could still go do Clase. They got the prospects to get it done. I feel like at this point, if the Dodgers wanted to get something done, I feel like they would have already gotten something. Who knows? Maybe, trickles into spring training a little bit. You never know. And then the Orioles. The Orioles make a ton of sense. The Orioles, to me, make a ton of sense. You just brought in Corbin Burns. You got to give up a couple of decent prospects, right? D.L. Hall, I feel like, has graduated from that prospect tier, I would say. I feel like that's a guy you can look at as a major leaguer at this point. And then Joey Ortiz, right? Still in that top 100 list. You got to give up a couple of decent prospects, but they got more. They could definitely get something done, in my opinion. And listen, Craig Kimbrell, fine. I think that's a good addition for the bullpen, but my goodness, he still gives me heart attacks. Those are the two words I always connect with Craig Kimbrell. Always, right? And in my opinion, if I could bring in Emmanuel Clase as my closer, and then Craig Kimbrell, Cano, Columbia, these are guys that are more setup guys. That's what a team that would be. What a team. And they have the prospects to get it done. And hey, you know what? They made that move for Burns a couple of days after new ownership. Maybe they keep going. We'll see. And Clase, the one thing with him, let's actually talk about Clase for a quick second. Let's go to his numbers here. And I mentioned, right, he's one of the most dominant closers in the game at this point. But Clase, he is under a lot of control. He's not going to be a free agent until after 2020. Well, if the club options are exercised, he won't be a free agent until after that. But his main contract that's guaranteed, it's going to be until 2026. So then he's got a couple of club options after that. But he's so cheap. All right, $4 million for the AAV. That's insane, right? So a team like the Orioles, right, yeah, sure, you got new ownership there, right? But, hey, just saying, it's not that much money to add. So I think the Orioles could be a pretty good fit. The Padres, again, money seems to be an issue, but like I said, he's cheap. That would be a really good addition for them. And what a bullpen that they would put together here. All right, you got Suarez here. You've added Matsui. You've added Woo-Suk-Go, right? You brought in Luis Patino, right? You brought in Enyel De Los Santos. Maybe they go back. Hey, that was with the Guardians too. Maybe they come back together. I mean, that would be a pretty nasty bullpen if you ask me. The Angels, in my opinion, I feel like they could really use something for this bullpen. Sure, I see people say, well, Carlos Estevez is their closer. They also brought in Robert Stevenson. Also brought in Matt Moore. So they have made a couple of additions here, right? Along with Jose Cisnero. That's another one. So they have made moves. Can they make another? We got the Texas Rangers. This is a team that I've been linking Emmanuel Clase to for a while. You did bring in David Robertson, sure. I feel like they could get something done if they really wanted to. They got some prospects that are blocked. Either way, I think there's a lot of teams out there that really could make some sense. My two favorites at this point, I'd probably go Dodgers and I'd probably go the Orioles, right? Because they got prospects and, hey, they're in a win-now mode. And I think for Clase, that would be a really good addition for both of them. Or he could end up just staying pat, right? Could end up just staying pat. Listen, the Guardians, man. Guardians, I think they're a team. They're not bad, right? You got some pretty decent pieces here. You got Manzardo probably coming up this year. Quan, I love. Jimenez, I think, is underrated. Obviously, Jose Ramirez, right? But I'm talking about all the other pieces besides Jose Ramirez. So they got some pieces here. Rotation and Bieber, that's another one, right? Emmanuel Clase, Bieber, that could be a potential package, right? Bieber, he's only got one more year until free agency. He's had health issues. He's been up and down with that. So not as much value for him as you would think, right? Package him and Clase together, then that could maybe be something. I could see the Guardians maybe hanging on to Bieber until the deadline, see if he can raise his value a little bit despite time going by. So Bieber is a guy I could see if he's healthy and showing that he's good and the Guardians are not really fully in it, then Bieber could be a piece that gets moved. So maybe they keep those guys separate. But either way, even without Bieber, you still have a pretty young rotation. All right. Don't forget, you brought in Barlow too, right, for this bullpen. And I think the Guardians are a pretty decent team, to be honest with you. I think they're going to be right there in that Central Division. They'll be competing. So there's very good reason to hang on to Emmanuel Clase as well. We'll have to just wait and see, like I always say. We had a couple more moves today, I mentioned Ryan Brasier going with the 2-year deal, going back to the Dodgers. Listen, I've been one guy that's mentioned many times, don't fix what's not broke. Why fix something that is not broke? And Brasier, in my opinion, I worried for the guy if he went somewhere else. We have seen guys go to these teams where they get themselves back on track. I always think of like Kevin Gausman. That's like a perfect fit for me when it comes to what I'm trying to talk about, where he went to the Giants, got his career on track there, and he went to the Blue Jays, and he's doing phenomenal, right? So Brasier, if he went somewhere else, could he have replicated what he did with the Dodgers? Who knows? I don't know. But to me, I think there's nothing wrong with him staying here. I think it's a really good move. However, the Dodgers, that's not the only move they made with their bullpen today. They sent Caleb Furgeson to the Yankees in exchange for Matt Gage and a lower-level minor league pitcher in Christian Zazueta. Sorry if I botched that. If I botched that, I apologize. But for the Yankees, I really like this move, and here is the trade. So right now, Matt Gage doesn't really have any value, and Zuzueta was not popping up in the BTV system, which pretty much signifies he's a lower-level prospect, probably has like $1 to $2 million worth of value, if even that. So basically for the Yankees here, and for the Dodgers, he had one more year of control. So for the Dodgers, they thought, okay, let's bring in a guy like Matt Gage. He's under a lot of control. He's a guy that has really not fully found his way, and he's 30 years old already, a very older minor leaguer. But we've seen these older guys come up, even though they haven't got a lot of major league time, and they've done pretty well. But Gage, he's put up some decent numbers so far in the major leagues over the last couple of years. He was with the Blue Jays a couple of years ago, had 11 appearances, a 1.38 ERA. Last year with the Astros, he had 10 strikeouts per 9 with a 2.70 ERA. The Yankees claimed him off waivers not too long ago, and they just sent him in this deal. But for the Yankees, I like this move. I think that's a really good addition, adding Caleb Furgeson. This is a guy, I think he's a underrated lefty out there. All right, Caleb Furgeson, that was a name that came up in the Mookie Betts talks a few years ago with the Red Sox Dodgers, right? But Caleb Furgeson, solid year last year, 68 games overall, 60 innings, the ERA of 3.43, FIP right around the same, 10 strikeouts per 9, a little over 3 walks per 9, good velocity, added some velocity last year. So for the Yankees bullpen, I think that's a really nice addition here. You've got 2 lefties that you've added now from the Dodgers, funny enough. So you got Furgeson and Victor Gonzalez now. Gives them some more balance in that bullpen. I like it. I think it's a good, solid move. Good, solid move. And Zach G, absolutely not. I will never shave my beard. I can't do that. I've had this beard. How long have I had it? It's been 10 years. 10 years. Actually, 9 years and 6 months. So in August, that's August of 2014, because I worked for a grocery store at the time, Publix. I know probably a few of you know Publix. And we had to shave for work back then. So I had a clean-shaven face. I looked like a giant baby at the time. And after that, I was like, I became a teacher, and I'm like, okay, all right, we're growing this thing. And I have not been clean-shaven since 2014, funny enough. So it's been almost 10 years since I've had a beard. Donnie, it's not that I'm tracking it. It's just now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, yeah, you know what? It's been 10 years. So anyway, absolutely not doing that. We're not. But I would love the 250 likes, Zach G, like he said in the chat. 250 likes. Goofy Goober. I don't think I could ever reveal the hair, you know? And honestly, if you want to see what my hair look like, just go to my Instagram. You can go look there. I don't know. It's kind of a thing. It's kind of a thing. I got to wear the hats. So anyway, back to the Yankees. I think this is a good addition. I think their bullpen is looking really strong. So, and as for the Marlins, their pursuit of a shortstop is still ongoing. They've been looking at a few different guys here. Tim Anderson, Ahmed Rosario, Nick Ahmed, Adalberto Mondesi, Red Sox legend, might I add, even though he played 0 games for the Red Sox. That is a guy that has popped up for the Marlins recently. If I were to go with a guy, listen, if I'm the Marlins, if I want to bring in something for the fan base and a guy that could give you some decent production, I'm going Tim Anderson. He's not going to be expensive. He's looking basically for a prove-it kind of a deal. I think, 1 year, $8 to $10 million. I think that's a fair deal. See if he can get his career back on track. Goes to Miami. I think that's a perfect fit. Right? Ahmed Rosario, I think, would be good. But I think for the Marlins, they're probably looking at like a 1 year deal. Seems to be, in my opinion, probably what based off of what really they've done this offseason and the way they've always dealt with money. I think right now, just go with a 1 year deal with Tim Anderson. It's a prove-it deal. So guys on those prove-it deals, many times, they tend to come through. And I think a fresh start for Tim Anderson in Miami, I think that'd be a great fit. Maybe they go the 2 year route. I mean, I think Ahmed Rosario would be decent. He wasn't really all that great last year. But in my opinion, I would rather go for, I don't know. I feel like Tim Anderson, in my opinion, Rosario is projected for more, 2.3 on the Fangraph WAR. Tim Anderson at a 1.6. I don't know. I think you could end up getting a really good season out of Tim Anderson. So, I've talked about Willy Adames and a trade. At this point, I think Adames ends up staying with the Brewers, in my opinion. I think he just stays, right? I don't know. I think that would be a good fit for the Marlins. So, we will see. We will see. But everyone, I'm going to hop out of here. I'm going to get out of here. But please, make sure you go check out the BetUS special deal for the Super Bowl this coming weekend. But before that, we got a whole week. I would imagine maybe some teams out here want to get some stuff done before the big weekend. So make sure you go check that out. But everyone, my night is not over. I am heading over to Ballcap Sports with Jim. We're going to be doing the Barreled Up podcast, and we're doing the Barreled Up podcast tonight with Giraffe Neck Mark. Giraffe Neck Robbie, Giraffe Neck Mark. We are coming together, everyone. We are coming together. Who would have thought Giraffe Neck Robbie and Giraffe Neck Mark would be crossing paths? So go check that out. We're heading over there. We're starting at 10 o'clock. That's 5 minutes. Go to Ballcap Sports. Go to his channel. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. Everyone, thank you so much. I appreciate you always stopping by here. Have yourself a great night. And if you are heading over to Jim's channel, I'll see you there. Have yourself a great night, everyone. And I'll talk to you next time.